Good evening, everybody. Give it just a few minutes here. We'll get started. Who got a chance to watch the live video the other morning when we were white bass fishing? we So I didn't do a live this morning, but the action the other morning when we were doing the live was pretty intense. This morning was double that. We got a lot of great YouTube footage or GoPro footage, and I'm just doing some editing, getting it ready for Angling Buzz, and that one will actually be on the Angling Buzz TV, I believe, next week. And tomorrow I've got Midwest Outdoors coming. I've got a trip here in the morning, and then Midwest Outdoors is coming in the afternoon. We're going to be doing some filming. Hopefully, we can get those fish to go. It's really been a good morning bite. It seems it's funny. Yesterday was it? Yeah, yesterday, 20 after 10. We were in our first spot, and I told Joe, I said 20 after 10. If they really slow down, we're out of there, and we did. We left, and then this morning, we just absolutely put a serious whack fest on them right away this morning, and kind of the same thing. About 20 after 10, it was kind of slowing down. I look over at the clock. It's like, boy, this is like deja vu. So we decided to get out of there, and we went and checked a few other spots. And but by that point, both live wells were pretty well packed to the gills. There wasn't putting any more in the boat, and Joe's got he's got a good I don't know, he's probably got 500 fish or so that he's cleaned up and will divvy amongst his families, and he's gonna eat fish a few times a week, which is what they do anyway. Rather than buying cod and stuff from the grocery store, if they're eating fish 2-3 times a week, now they've got a bunch of white bass that they can eat and not have to go to the grocery store, and right where it came from, and no processed stuff or anything like that. Fresh from the Wolf River system. So a lot of fun. It's always nice when I get to catch them too and not have to clean them. That's my hands hurt so bad. I'm finally, after taking a couple days off of cleaning fish, my fingers and stuff are starting to get a little bit of feeling back into them. Those gill plates. It isn't so much, the spines. Yeah, if you get poked, you get poked a little bit. But what hurts me the most is when we're taking fish out of live wells or cleaning them, and the gill plates, cut the inside side of your thumb or on your fingers. Those things are like razor blades. So it's been a good week. Fish are right on schedule. It's always Mother's Day. The lilacs are blooming, and water temperature is about 64, 65. I'd say we're about halfway through the spawn. The spawning. A lot of fish still had spawn in them yet today, and so a lot of fish were spawned out. So they're still going to be around. I'm going to take a guess. Just again, just a rough guess, but we'll probably still see some fish in the river here for the next couple of weeks because there's a lot of fish that went way up north, and those fish are going to come back down too. But I'd say you're pretty good if you're going to come through, this week and into the weekends, and maybe Monday, Tuesday. You're going to start to see some fish now starting to head back and get back out into the lakes, and hopefully there'll be a good bite down in Oshkosh and Winneconne when they start heading back down. Because I was talking with another guide on the system here today for a while, and we just never had that big push that came through Oshkosh this year like we normally get, where they'll come into Oshkosh by Fratello's and in the middle of the river there and just school up. And they were there. I mean, I can remember the days that we were there seeing them, but they just didn't eat. I think there's just so much food. There was so much food in the river, and they just kept right on migrating up and got into the lake. And there was one day I was out on Poigan. I went back in the Norwegian Bay, and it was just solid fish, all white bass staging to go up the river. And then within about a week or so, those fish all went up, and it's been good ever since. So um, I appreciate everybody's comments. I love reading, the biologists, the internet biologists that are always saying, they're depleting the system and, taking too many fish out or, whatever. Guys, if you just humble yourselves and go up to Fremont any one of these days over the next couple of weeks and go down by the bridge bar or just on the river center that down there and just watch for an hour, 1 hour. That's all you got to do, and it'll kind of give you an idea on what this is all about. Now, granted, that's just one little area. You got to remember there's about 50 miles of river that these people are fishing, if not more. In boats offshore, and the Hmong and the Asian population are just prevalent right now in the winter in the Fremont area, fishing from all the docks and the shorelines. And at any given point in time, you can look and you're going to see, 50 people with a fish on, and it's all day, all night. These guys go up and they fish overnight. They fish during the day, and there's a lot of good fishermen that are out there, and they're feeding their families, and they've been doing it for generations upon generations. I talked to an older gentleman at the dock the other day. He's lived on the river for 50 years, and he's like, when I moved here, uh, it was the same thing now, but 50 years ago. Everybody was saying that, with how many people are catching all these fish, that there's never going to be any left. And it's the same comments year after year after year. And it's the same numbers. And I'm going to tell you, I've been guiding now for 23 years. And I go back 10, 15 years ago, and we would catch a lot of fish on the ice. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of fish in the ice, but I never seen the numbers is what I'm seeing now in the river. And it seems like the last 2 to 3 years, it keeps getting better and better each year. Now, does that mean that, how do I put this? Is that, um, certain areas are not, not seeing the fish like what they used to. Some of the guys are saying down in the Fond du Lac River and whatnot, they used to see a ton of fish. It used to be a pretty big thing. I'm here to tell you that there's no shortage of white bass on Winnebago right now either. We were down on the south end of the lake looking for some crappies the other day and just checking around all the artificial spawning reefs. And every single one of those little spawning reefs was just covered. I mean, covered with white bass. And the ones we were catching were hard as a rock, big fat bellies on them, and hard as a rock yet. So they weren't even getting close to spawning. It's crazy. So you've got all the fish out in the lake. I know there's a ton of fish out on Poigan right now, and then you've got the fish in the river. And from the mouth of the river all the way up to Shyocton, Shawano Dam, there's white bass in every little corner. I mean, they're just loaded. And I've never seen the numbers that we've got this year. And other gentleman that's on the river, pretty much every day I see him quite frequently. I stopped and chatted with him a little bit today too, and he was even saying that we think that they're out on the an upper end of their cycle, and there's just so many fish. And so let's kind of talk about what these fish are, and when you look at what a white bass is and how prolific they are in a system like ours. We've got a flowing river system that has marshes and lakes and rocks and docks and everything else that these fish need to survive and spawn. Now, if we didn't have that, totally agree. I would be totally in favor of watching bag limits and stuff like that, but there's no reason to here. I mean, unless you guys want walleyes and perch to be gone, I think it's a great trade-off to kill a bunch of white bass so that our walleyes and perch can survive, because these things are feeding machines. A walleye takes 3 to 4 years to hit maturity. A white bass is mature after its first year, and they're laying eggs, immediately after that. At the end of the summer, these white bass that are spawning now are going to be 10 inches already. And, one white bass, just one fish, a good mature female, and we've got some big dandy ones this year. They're having a 500,000 to 1,000,000 eggs, one fish, remember. And then out of that, you're seeing let's just say, pick a stupid number out of 1,000,000 eggs. Let's just say 5% of those, survive to hit maturity. I don't know what the actual number is, but I don't think anybody really does. But 5% of 1,000,000 eggs for one fish. And you can only imagine how many fish are in the system, and they're doing that every single year. There's really no way to put a dent in these things. The people, seems like they disappear in the winter. They're not disappearing, they're just not. You got to look at why we used to catch these things out in the mud. Same reason why we used to catch a lot of the walleyes and stuff out in the mud too, is because white bass love feeding on shad. That is one of their favorite foods. And that's why down in Illinois and all these southern lakes, Illinois, they have those power plant lakes and such. They put white bass and stripers and all these big feeding fish into these systems to control the shad populations. And we don't have the shad anymore, so what are they feeding on? They're eating everything that they can possibly get their mouths grab. They're eating the walleye fry, they're eating the perch fry, they're eating crappies and bluegills and our trout perch and shiners, everything that the good fish want, and they're eating the good fish on top of it. That's what these fish are doing. So go back, and everybody, the comments today are kind of just ridiculous. People I don't think that really understand what this system is, and the amount of fish. And guys, I'm no biologist either, but I'm on the water every day, and I've been on the water every day for darn near 25 years, and even going back when we were kids, catching white bass. My uncle lived on the river, grew up on Lake Winnebago. My grandma had a place on the other side of the on Winnebago. So I've been on this water my whole life and kind of seen how things have progressed and degressed on all this different species. And I'm here to tell you, the white bass may not be showing up in the wintertime, but that doesn't mean they're gone. They change spots. This past fall, the amount of fish that we've seen in the river, walleyes and white bass, That's where they were, is because there was no food really out in the lakes. They went up the river this fall and they just stayed there. And I think that's what's happening. Is I think these fish, with low water years and low current years, those rivers are not hard to stay in. And white bass are a river fish to begin with. So we're seeing a lot of fish. And this last winter out in Poigan, we caught all kinds of white bass. I mean, there were white bass everywhere. Seems like the last 2 years, actually, the white bass have been really prevalent back out in the lakes. So again, it's changing patterns. The people that are arguing a lot of the times is, especially when it came time to the walleyes, right? How many people that fished the river system this year had a phenomenal river run? I can say this was the best walleye run I've ever seen. I've been out on Winnebago a few times chasing walleyes. I cannot believe the amount of fish that are out in the lake right now and how many we're catching. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So as far as again, fish change patterns when their food goes away. And I'm not here to say that I know everything, and I'm just telling you my experience, my opinion, what I've seen. And when you run into times and periods of time where you can't catch something in one place, do you go home or do you go explore? And I can't go home. I have to be out on the water. So we go and explore. And the last few years, especially with the walleyes, with the shad population being next to nothing, the last 10 years, we've had to change how we fish. And it's not the trolling patterns and stuff like you were used to out over the mud flats, and chasing these big schools of shad around. It's now we're fishing in a lot of weeded areas and a lot of shallow areas where all these small bluegill and perch and crappie fry and all the minnow fry are hanging out and not so much out in the mud anymore. And the one thing I'll definitely say is the last couple times out on the lake while we're ripping hair jigs and different fast moving baits is how many trout perch we're actually snagging on our hair jigs and our normal jigs and such. So I know there's a lot of good trout perch up there, and that's a great food source for those walleyes. And I hope there's enough out there to sustain. Let's see. Um, yeah, Chris. So Chris had asked, "Do you think the improvement is due to no real ice season?" I can't say that. I mean, the ice season takes out a fraction of fish, and I get it. If you have a really good year, you can definitely harvest a lot of walleyes, and it definitely helps. I mean, it keeps that many more fish in the system for the spring. But there's just that many walleyes right now, and again, I would love to see them change their how they count their fish. And I think they did this year. I think they put some more nets out and did a lot of different things rather than just using the spring trawling data and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see where things go the next couple of years. But I'm going to be the first one to stick my neck out and say that we're not in any sort of dire straits or in any harm's way. I don't think for any of the white bass or walleyes. From what I've seen, we've got more numbers of fish in the river than what I've ever seen ever. I mean, and I'm not only that, but the Fox River was actually pretty good this year too. Up by Amaro and Eureka, there was quite a few guys catching some nice fish up there, and that's usually been pretty dead ever since they put that Terrell Island project in and changed the flow coming out of the Fox. It really stopped seeing those fish go up the river. Absolutely, Chris. That year class we had from a few years ago are all going to be in that 18 to 20, 21 inch, and there are a pile of them out there. It's going to be a really good summer for guys looking to catch a lot of nice fish. Jared asks, do you think sheephead numbers has gone up as well since you first started guiding? The numbers you see from the trawl claim, white bass are down compared to the late 80s and 90s, but again, it was probably where the fish are when they trawl back in. 100%, Jared, you hit it on the head. I use the analogy all the time for people that haven't, been on here before, but let's just, common sense here right now. When you've got they've been trawling in the same spots, A, B, C, D, right? They go over the same spots, and they've been doing it for however many years. Let's just say 30 years, and that's kind of what they base their numbers off of because they've got a steady point that they've been trawling, and they take that data, and that's what they use their data from. But let's just take an example, right? You've got a 200-acre forest, and you've got a section, let's just say a 40-acre section of hardwoods that these deer and everything go in, and they're hanging out there, and they go in and they clear cut that 40-acre section. Did you kill the deer? No, the deer moved. You may not have the same amount of deer in that same parcel, but you didn't kill the deer. The deer move, and that's exactly what happens to these fish. We didn't, the shad disappeared, right? And the white bass and the walleyes that are normally out chasing all these fish, they're not chasing them anymore because they're not there. So you got to go and you got to figure out where these fish are. And I think what's happening is, especially on the walleye side, definitely these fish have started migrating a lot shallower. And you look at the tournaments and talk to these guys, and sure, you always get your mud bite. I mean, there's always, that late summer mud bite where the fish go out over the mud. But I bet most of the tournaments are being won in extremely shallow water or in the weeds. And, these fish, and that's kind of been the case for a lot of years, but I think we're seeing it. I've definitely seen it over the last 4 or 5 years. I don't fish very much in water, over 5, 6 feet deep, if that. Most of my walleyes I'm catching, from May all the way through, July and August are up in 2 to 3 feet of water. I don't very seldom ever go out and fish anything deeper. And that's just, you're following the food patterns, you're following the patterns of these fish. So, we'll see what happens. I hope they don't socially change any regulations because of the social pressure that they get from people on out in the Facebook world. The guys in the DNR, I think they understand what these fish are. A lot of people don't. They don't understand how fast they reproduce and how prevalent they are. Going to look, what I think 3 to 4 years is about average for how old these fish get. On the northern lakes, they say white bass will get up to 8 years old. And I've done a lot of research, a lot of studying on these fish as well. And the it's kind of like salmon and trout, right? A salmon grows to 4 years old and they die. These white bass, after 1 year's time, they're mature and they're laying eggs and reproducing. A walleye takes 3 to 4 years before that happens. That's why like panfish, bluegills, and such too, are so prolific, and there's so many of them, is because they start reproducing. They grow fast and they start reproducing, and they're laying a lot of eggs, in very short times. So that's why these bluegills and panfish typically have a much more I don't know what the word would be. I guess success rate as far as hatching goes is because you're starting off with so many more eggs per fish. And that's just what happens, and you can't really get rid of them. I don't think there's much out in our system that truthfully feeds on the white bass. When we've got the trout perch and the shiners and yellow perch, the white bass are a pretty spiny fish, and I don't see a whole lot of walleyes. Very seldom. Once in a while, if we have a really, really bad year where there's like no bait whatsoever in the springtime, you might find a few walleyes with some small year-young white bass in their bellies. But I can't remember the last time I've ever seen that. Everything that I've ever caught, especially in the springtime, is either full of shiners or trout perch or yellow perch or frogs. Especially in the river. And then out in the lakes, a lot of times it's baby bluegills or small perch or even bigger perch, and then a lot of the trout perch. So, it's just kind of one of those things where we'll see, and they'll make the call. But for 100 years, guys, they've been killing thousands of white bass every single day for the whole river run. And these people come from all over the country to do this, and they've been doing it for as long as I can remember. And it's it just keeps getting better. So same arguments, same people that are complaining are the same people that typically only get to fish once or twice, and they think that everybody's catching all their fish, and there's not going to be any left for them when they get out. So I'm here to tell you, get out because there's a lot of fish. Let's see, what do we got? Lots of little walleyes in Clark's Bay right now. Yeah, there's a lot of those little guys out there, a lot of those 10 to 12s. It's good to see. We're gonna have a couple of really good years here coming up. Chris is asking next question: would you go upriver or downriver tomorrow from Fremont tomorrow, going out in the afternoon? Chris, honestly, today after we got done fishing, we've been fishing pretty much right in town, but we went down south of town and there's fish everywhere. The biggest thing I can tell you is, we still been having some pretty cool nights. So these fish are a little bit deeper, right away in the morning. Excuse me. And then as the sun comes up, as the day progresses, they're just moving up shallower into the trees and up where they're spawning. If you have side imaging on your boat, you're just going to be dumbfounded when you start cruising around and just looking. They're everywhere. Are literally everywhere. They're on both sides of the river. They're in the middle of the river. And anywhere we drove today, we were just seeing millions of white bass. The side imaging screen is pretty crazy when you run into it. So, I guess the best thing to do is what I've found is that if you can get away from people, yeah, the live scope is fun. I haven't even put it down, honestly. I just been watching my side imaging, because it's all you got to do is just find when you find a pocket of them and there's just 500 marks on the side of your screen or more, and there's nobody around. That seems to be kind of the key, is just finding an area that is less pressured, where there's less people. The minute more boats and stuff come in, the fish kind of start breaking up and start moving around. So now we just move a little bit or wait for people to kind of settle down and just sit tight. On your fly rig, you use a double overhand loop notch for your second and third flies or something else? So I run a let's see here. If you look at, I know on Google, there's a loop knot. We'll tie one here. Let's see if I got a jig. Hey, is anybody looking for a puppy? We've got a litter of wire-haired griffins that were just born a few days ago. So 9 weeks, from last week, we'll be looking to get rid of some puppies. I've got a couple of them gone, but beautiful dogs, great temperament. Mom and dad are really good, and yeah, if anybody's looking for some wire-haired griffins, let me know. So we'll tie a loop knot. I'll show you what you have. So what you're gonna do, and you can do it a couple different ways. This is just a jig. I didn't have a fly with me. But let's say this was going to be our second or third fly. I'm going to put my fly on and I'm going to just simply make a loop. And then to do a loop knot, all you're going to do is just kind of wrap the line around a few times of each other. And, best way to do is do a Google search on tying a loop knot. I like to go about 5 or 6 times, and then I'll bring the jig or the fly through. And that's it. So you've got your loop and your fly just kind of dangles on there, and then you can do your second one, and then your end one obviously is just tied normal at the end. But that's it. So I'll tie 2 loop knots and then a single at the end, and that's what I'm casting. And so the biggest thing I can tell you guys, what I found, again, just personal experience, right? I'm not saying everything I do is correct, but I've been watching a lot of guys struggle and been trying to help guys at the docks and stuff, teaching them, talking to people, and we're casting like a 7-foot lead. I see a lot of guys, they're casting on a 3-way. They'll have a sinker that's, 18 inches, and then their lead is like 20 inches, and they're not catching anything. My lead is about 10 inches, and my fly lead or my sinker lead is about 10 inches. My fly lead's about 7 feet. So I'm casting a lot longer leads and really quick snaps. You don't want to do the big sweeps, because I think what happens is when they get into these really big schools, if you're doing a big sweep, these fish can't see through. I mean, if they got fish swimming all next to them, and there's such a tight schooling, fish, they can't see past them. So you want to do just quick little pops, quick little snaps. And when you do that, you're going to, keep those flies right in those fish's mouth, or right in their zone there. And yeah, I mean, that's been working very good for us. Let's see. I wanted to post a video here. Let's see, where is it? It's not gonna let me. Call darn it. So I'll post it on the page. Uh, Catching triples is always a riot, when you can get three on at a time. But otherwise, you can just go on the live stream that we did the other day, and I think I got the times at like 19 minutes and then 28 minutes or whatever it was. But so you can get a kind of an idea on how long the leads are, and then how they're all spaced out. And I really think that having, when you're casting three flies like that too, it's kind of like casting an umbrella rig, right? You have that much more attractant. And when these big schools are swimming around, if they see those baits kind of whipping around down there, it's just drawing them in, and then they fight for it. The other thing too, spinners have been doing pretty good. Um, when the sun is been beaten on the water and it gets really warm, we've been just casting, small little spinners, and just doing a really slow retrieve. And the best part about fishing spinners is they just hit so darn hard. A lot of times they'll darn near rip the rod right out of your hands. You're not expecting it. So that's just another one. And then we've been throwing a lot of the baby ballers from Z-Man, and the little shad baits too that they have on some small crappie jigs. When I find a really big school of fish up tight to the wood, rather than trying to cast fly rigs or spinners, and getting the treble hooks and stuff like that all snagged up into the trees, a single hook crappie jig seems to bounce off the wood a little bit better, and we're not getting snagged up as much. And that's been a lot of fun too. It's just being able to feel the bite and set the hook. Um, Great times. I don't know how anybody can say they don't like catching white bass, because they're fun, they're great eating, and you can just absolute put a smackdown on them, and just I don't know. If there's nothing better for my enjoyment, I guess. I mean, everybody who we were talking to last week is, I don't know how much more fun a guy can have standing up. Um, let's see. Anyone catching pike in the river in Poigan? So, Greg, we've been catching pike on spinners, casting for white bass. Just pretty much every day we've been getting a couple pike. We've had a couple monsters on. We just losing them because we've only got 4 or 6 pound test line on, and you get a mid to upper 30s pike. Get them close to the boat, and then they typically thrash around and take off, and end up breaking the line. So. But we're catching a lot of those 2022s to a lot of small hammer handles. Um, let's see. Yeah, the pike are definitely coming back. Chris, I'm not doing the MWC. I'm just doing the Bago Walleye Club stuff. Just I look at it as, if I'm out guiding, versus the tournament stuff. I'd much rather be out there just having fun, and versus putting too much stress and stuff on the on the tournament stuff. So just doing the Bagel Walleye Club with my buddy Mike, and we're just gonna have some fun this summer. Um, so let's talk Bago and walleye. So Wind right now has kind of been, the key. The color of the water is some of the best I've seen in a long time. It's really nice and stirred up. It's pretty dirty. If you find some pockets with a little bit cleaner water around some of the reefs and stuff, it's been incredible fishing. My best bait has been throwing like a 3/8 to half-ounce hair jigs, purple and silver. I've got a couple of new powder, some paints that I'm doing that are some chrome plated stuff, and been kind of playing around, experimenting with that. But I've got a purple and a chrome, kind of like that purple flash from Berkeley hair jig that has been absolutely dynamite for me, and just absolutely ripping the snot out of them. Cast them out as far as you possibly can, and just start ripping as hard as you can. Making sure each time that the bait, falls and hits the bottom, keep your line tight, and you'll have no problem getting some walleyes out on the rocks. Seems like there's been a lot of fish down south, from like Long Point down to Abrams. There's a lot of fish down there, but there's also a good amount of fish up by Garlic and Nina Menasha as well, and right out in front of Oshkosh. Um, Beautiful fish too. Like I said, in the one guy had mentioned a lot of 1920s, and that's exactly it. I mean, we're catching a lot of really nice, solid fish, and haven't seen many small fish out on Bago yet. Everything's been, in that 18, 19-inch range. So should be a good summer, and be a lot of happy people, I think, catching a lot of nice walleyes. Up on Poigan, I'm starting to see some fish in the cane beds. They've been in there now for probably a week or two, and it's been a fun bite, especially if you get a calm day, which we never do. If you can get some calm weather and get up in the canes, a couple things you can do there. Obviously, just pitching slip bobbers with leeches works really well, or just a jig and a leech or jig and a crawler around the perimeters. But you'll see when you get up by these cane beds, when it's calm, you'll see minnows dancing around. If you're seeing that, get out a small spinner, or a small little floating crankbait of some sort, or even throw some jerk baits or something that kind of represent the same size what those minnows are, and hang on. There's a lot of there's some nice bass, a lot of pike, walleyes, white bass, and it's kind of been a mixed bag up in the cane beds doing that too. So lots of options. We're getting in that time of the year where you can pretty much do anything you want to out on the system. If you're a slip bobber guy, you can go out right now and catch fish on slip bobbers. If you like jigging, you can go anywhere in jig. If you like to troll, guys are doing a lot of trolling along the shorelines on the rocks, and catching a lot of nice fish trolling. So there's all kinds of options. If you like pulling flies, pulling flies in the river has been good, and casting flies, whatnot. So again, lots of options. You just got to get out there and do it, and you're not going to get them on the couch. um, let's see. Next week, I believe I do have a few openings next week. I know a lot of people are looking, trying to get out, and these 2 weeks around Mother's Day are always just book solid. With the white bass run, and then we kind of slow down a little bit and get back into the walleye. So if you are looking to get out, shoot me a message, shoot me a note, and I'll see what I have available. And we'll go from there. Saturday, I have my stepdaughter's graduating from UW Oshkosh. I'm pretty proud of her for that. So we're going to be doing that stuff with family, and then Sunday we'll be back out on the water. And the rest of the week we'll be back out. So if you guys have any questions, please just shoot me a message, shoot me a text. I promise I will get to them. I might not get to them right away, but I promise I will reply back to you. Bob, you said the flatheads and big channel cats eat the baby white bass. I'm glad something is, because right now it's the only way. The only thing we have for predators is humans. Jared, I was a night bite for white bass. Phenomenal. If you can get out and fish overnight, I've had a few guys, I show up to the landing, and a couple of guys are coming up, and, been plenty of guys that have had 300 to 400 fish over, a nighttime, and they're casting, find a dock with a light, or underneath the bridges, or anywhere there's a light. just go up and start casting either, the fly rigs or spinners, or a lot of guys just, are casting slip bobbers with either plastic, kind of like crappie style baits, or minnows if you really want to get into the minnows. Yeah, is it legal to use float lights on the river? I don't know that, Bob. I don't know if you can use that. I mean, I know like all uh, the rafts and stuff all have all these big lights on it, and a lot of these docks will have these big giant floodlights and stuff. And when they're in there, man, it is game on. They congregate so thick around these docks, and I know a lot of the guys will just throw twister tails, honestly, because it's, you're going to catch so many fish that you want something real easy to take on and off, and something that isn't super hard to cast or work. So yeah, if you can get out and you want to fish overnight and it's nice outside, more power to you, and you're gonna whale into them. Just look for the lights, and you'll find the fish for certain. What else do we got? I don't think that's I think that's all I got for you guys. Trying to think, but yeah. Um Bob says Red Banks when lit up is phenomenal. Yeah, anywhere there's lights, it's good fishing. Well, everybody, I appreciate it. Again, if I'm upsetting anybody, if not meaning to, we're just catching fish, man. It's time of the year and trying to do our part to save the walleyes and the perch. And after this, I will not be targeting. I think after these next like 4 or 5 days, you guys, anybody that wants to stay in the river and do their white bass thing, I'm done. I'm gonna switch to walleyes and start chasing some bluegills and looking for walleyes, and maybe doing some casting for some pike and stuff too. So I'll have my fair share of white bass, and I don't think my live wells like me very much anymore. I got to go clean a bunch of scales and dry them and crap out of those live wells. Um, so that's it, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in again. And Lance and um, Scott Roloff, they couldn't make it tonight. I'm going to try and see if we can do it Tuesday night, or maybe pick a different night. Two buddies that won the NTC out on Lake Erie. We're going to get those guys on again and let them tell their story, and talk about some baits that they're using. And congratulations to those boys and everybody that did well out at the NTC. That's a huge accomplishment to win that thing back to back. Just getting there is hard enough to do, and for those guys to get there and win it 2 years in a row on two different bodies of water is pretty incredible. And I know Lance will like his new boat too. That'll be 2 brand new boats for him, and I'm sure he's smiling and the kids are happy too. So, sounds good, guys. Scott, how's the catfish bite? I haven't really even tried doing much catfishing yet. I think there's been a bunch of guys on the river catching some channels. I have the guys that normally are out fishing catfish. I don't think have really started yet, and it typically, once June comes around, they'll start getting going here. And I know I've got a bunch of stuff that I want to go try. I'm going to really kind of concentrate on the flatheads this year as well, and looking to have some fun with those big fish. They're so much fun to catch. But that's what I got, guys. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to clean up the boat here a little bit, get ready for tomorrow, and go do it all over again. Having a good evening. Have a good weekend and the rest of the week. And yeah, shoot me a note if you want to get out or if you have any questions. Appreciate it, guys. Cheers.